Visual skill is a pretty important part of motorcycle riding, and in my opinion, a key part of visual skill is the use of reference markers, also known as reference points, to lay out the spots you want to hit around the track. In this video, I want to go over the 4 main markers you can benefit from using, as well as look at the order of importance that I feel they sit in. So like I said, we're going to go over the 4 typical markers used on the track: brake, entry, apex, and exit markers. And for this, we're going to go in order of least important to most important. So up first, and at number 4, we have our turn or entry marker. The turn marker is the point at which you want to begin steering, leaning the bike over and entering the corner. And knowing exactly where you want to begin steering is a great way to build consistency with the lines you create into, through, and out of corners. Also, having this reference means that it's easier to test and change your corner entry approach more precisely because you have a solid reference for your existing approach. However, the biggest reason to have them is because of the lesson they provide less experienced riders. A trait of newer riders to the track is the tendency to drift into the corner too early and create a line that's too shallow, which ultimately spoils their exit. Having a solid turn marker gives you a point of reference to aim for and ensures you stay on a more correct line, which can in some cases massively open up the exit for you and bring with it a number of benefits. For this reason, I would always recommend newer riders look to work with turn markers wherever they can. That being said, as you become more experienced, you will begin to place less importance on them because, as you'll find, the point where you begin steering for a corner can be affected by a number of outside factors, largely from a change in speed or position on the track. For instance, I've heard some high-end racers omit the use of these markers altogether, instead opting to judge their corner entry timing based on the picture they see ahead of them and where they are in relation to the inside of the track. Now, this is a perfectly viable option, but what those riders also have is a ton of experience of the track itself and a very good level of bike control, in my opinion, making it easier for that style to work consistently. For that reason, I would still personally recommend the use of turn markers wherever possible, because I feel it just helps practice more ideal lines that we're looking to hit early on, as well as achieve a greater level of consistency early on too. Up next at number 3, exit markers. Exit markers are important because they help us utilize the often most important part of the corner, the exit. If you're not getting your eyes up and out at corner exits from around the apex, there's a good chance you're leaving speed on the table. And this part of the visual routine was a huge revelation for me personally, and when I was taught how to correctly use my eyes through the mid and exit phase of a corner, I realized I could be picking the bike up much earlier and driving out earlier too. And this helped me in a lot of places. Having an exit marker in place gives you something to look for, and it shows you how much space you really have in this important part of the corner. Now, an exit marker could be a solid object in a spot you want to go to next, something like a tyre wall, a yard marker, or the curbing on the outside of the track. Or you may just choose to go for something more vague, like the edge of the track a good distance out of the corner, or maybe just to look right up the track itself if you're exiting onto a straight. In truth, if everything has gone according to plan up until the apex, where you end up at corner exit is fairly predictable, so don't feel like you need to be massively specific with where you look. You just want to be sure you don't underutilize the space at corner exit, so whatever allows you to optimally stand the bike up and get the greatest exit drive is deemed a good marker. At number 2, the braking marker. Braking markers are most important in big braking zones because it's in these sensory-rich parts of the track that you want to be most in control, but also it's where most speed can be won or lost compared to the other braking zones. If you're not using braking markers in the big braking zones, it's likely that you'll spend a lot of time coasting up and being too tentative with the throttle down the straight and slowing down with little to no brakes when you eventually do apply them. This is wasted time. Having a solid braking marker to aim for means you have a place you can confidently accelerate to and begin braking from. But like I said, these are most important in the big braking zones, but I personally try to find markers in any place where I'm performing any sort of meaningful braking effort. Once again, because it gives me a reference for what I'm currently doing in case I want to change it later, and because of the benefits to consistency it brings. And finally, number 1, the apex. The apex is the most important marker to have and hit because it's typically from that point where you can begin standing the bike up and applying more throttle. If your apex position is poor or you're not hitting it correctly, then you're going to be costing yourself time. If it's too early, then you'll restrict your exit and how early you could stand the bike up and drive out. If it's much later than the corner requires, you're going to end up overslowing at corner entry and costing yourself time there instead. Standing the bike up and driving hard is typically where less experienced riders can gain a lot of time, and it's the apex position and your ability to hit it that has the biggest bearing on that. If you don't have a solid apex you're aiming for, then chances are you won't hit the correct one. Well, not consistently anyway. Okay, so that concludes our marker order of importance. But before we finish up here, I wanted to make a point about everything I've just covered and how it affects your performance. What I've just detailed is a solid starting point to learning and practicing good visual skill around the track, to get your eyes working in a more ideal way and in an easily replicable sequence. However, the reason why I say it's a starting point is because even though this method can serve you to a very high level, there are different ways to go about this, as I alluded to in the turn markers section. If you've never consciously practiced good visual skill, I would start with these 4 reference markers wherever you can. But as you get more experience and you feel you want to tweak and change your technique for a better end result, that's perfectly okay in my book. Like many things in track riding, there's no one way to achieve the same end result. And in the case of the markers you use, this is also the case in my experience. Is there a different method to reference points that you use that you find effective around the track? Tell us about it in the comments down below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, then please hit the button and subscribe to the channel for more performance riding advice and guides moving forward. See you next time.